A little
Okay.
circus museum and a little pie. It can't be bad.
There's a lots to do down here, believe me.
Oh yeah.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is. ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. לכו נרננה יאי די 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 לאדוני יאי די 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 נריע I see our rabbi is back. Going to remake him a host. As we turn our minds to the light of Shabbat, I think the person who is going to do that, I don't see. Does anybody have a set of candles handy? Oh, I see Denise has them. Denise, would you mind lighting those lovely candles? And if it was supposed to be you, thank you for being ready. But unmute yourself. And we have some words that you can share if you like.
Another week of work is ended. Again, Shabbat brings welcome peace. We pause from our labors to let Shabbat give another dimension to our lives. These Sabbath candles are symbols of the holiness we seek. Their brightness dispels gloom and lights a path to faith and hope. Their glow reminds us of the sacred bonds that link us to our people over space and time. Their radiance summons us to fulfill our people's mission, to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
The seventh day is consecrated to the eternal our God. With wine, our symbol of joy, we celebrate this day and its holiness. We give thanks for all our blessings, for life and health, for work and rest, for home and love and friendship. On Shabbat, eternal sign of creation, we remember that we are created in the divine image. We therefore raise the cup in thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon, hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor bedibor echad, hishmianu el hameyuchad. Adonai echad ushmo echad, l'shemul tiferet v'lithila. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטר בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We thank you, O God, for this time of prayer, when we become conscious of your presence and place before you our desires, our hopes, and our gratitude. This consciousness, this inner certainty of your presence is our greatest blessing. God, bless our worship this day. May the gleams of your light, the visions of your truth, which bless us here, abide with us when we go out into the world, keeping us steadfast in loyalty to you and to your commandments. Together we say, Amen. We rise in body and spirit for the Baruch Hu, our call to worship.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed, leolam va'ed. Yadadai-dai-dai, 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 yadadai-dai-dai. As we look around at the beautiful creation, at the sunset that now stands outside or is falling outside with the new time, we look at this world and we say, Eze achla olam. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. כשאני רואה בחלוני עץ שמוריק לך וגם לי, אני שר לעצמי, איזה אחלה עולם. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. V'hayom kol yafeh, v'kali kol kach, lomar shani ohev otach. Hashamayim chulim, hanan hu lavan, והבוקר בהיר ובלילה בשן ויחלום לעצמי איזה אחלה עולם ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבי. We share the bima with Leilani Pollock, who's going to unmute and lead us in Shema and Ve'ahavta.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvchol nafshecha uvchol meodecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ela asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinanta levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha uvektecha b'derech uv'shochecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות להם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיהם.
Yasher koach, toda rabah. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, אוסף אלה. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מלכותך רוב ענך, חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי ענו ואמרו, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם, לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם, לעולם ועד. ונאמר כיפדה אדוני את יעקב, וגילו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu Leshalom, V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu Lechayim, Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu Leshalom, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Hashkivenu Leshalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
Every single word is a whole world. When a person stands up to pray and recites the words of the prayers, they are gathering beautiful flowers and blossoms one by one until they make a bunch. Then they pick more one by one until they make another bunch, and they put them together. So they go on picking and gathering more and more lovely bouquets. So it is in prayer. One goes from letter to letter until several letters are joined together to make a syllable. One does the same to make whole words. Then one joins together two words and goes on, picking and gathering until one completes a whole blessing. With our prayers in our hand, let's all rise up together as we continue with the Amidah HaTefilah.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words. Let's all read together. For the awareness of our soul, our light within. For the world around us so filled with beauty. For the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael, bashalom. We take a few moments to find our own shalom, our own moments of peace. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, ויוד ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Oh, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Oh, say shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru, ve'imeru, Amen.
Our thoughts now turn to our loved ones, members of our community who are in need of healing. Whether they are in need of physical, mental, or spiritual healing, we take them into our hearts this time of prayer. If you'd like to mention the name of a loved one that you are thinking of at this moment, please enter their name in the chat box and we will lift them up in prayer as well. Let's now join together as one community with our Misha Berach prayer, our prayer for healing.
מי שברך אבותינו, מקור הברכה לאמותינו, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
We are thinking of and wishing a refuah shlema to Randy Arneger, Evan Bin, Joe Brickman, Joel Broida, Laura Carlos, John Conway, Mark Edelstein, Benjamin Edelstein, Brian Edelstein, Danielle Heyman Feist, Linda Fine, Eric Fisk, Iris Fisk, Robert Gold, Buddy Green, Vicky Hano, Clay Ispitz, Louis Ispitz, Lori Cattleman, Jerry Klein and Bonnie Brzezowski, Judy Klein, Hank Corin, Wendy Sugarman Krasnoff, Stephen Levine, Dr. Sonia Link, Elsa Mikosh, Elaine Miller, John Parsonson, Bob Pizzuti, Ruth Poehler, Victoria Richards, Jane Rifkin, Jess Rifkin, Don Rolander, Rhoda Ross, Bob Seiler, Cal Simon, Dr. Cindy Steinman, Pete Tanner, David Wallstein, and Elaine Wallstein.
מי שברך אמותינו, מקור הברכה לאבותינו, bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's great to be with you this evening. I was thinking this week about our Torah portion, Leviticus, it's Vayikra, it's the very beginning of the Torah portion. of the book of Leviticus, I should say. And it's a little bit of a gory experience. We moved from building the tabernacle to slaughtering animals really quickly. And so we just finished building the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, and now we're on to worship. For Israelite worship, it meant animal sacrifice. And if you sort of read through the portion, there's a lot of different kinds of sacrifices, and you learn about the ox and the goats and the pigeons and all that other stuff. And it is quite literally a lot of blood and gore. It's a lot of this blood being sprayed around and organs being removed, and it's really sort of gross. And so I figured that tonight, let's focus on something that's maybe only a little less messy, which is Israeli politics, because it is about that time for the elections again. Israeli elections 2021, the return of the return of the return of the return of the elections the past 2 years. This is the fourth one in 2 years. So here we go again and again and again. So Israel is going to the polls once again this on March 23rd. So it's coming right up. And so, as I've done in the past, I thought it would be fun to sort of do a little bit of an exercise, a little bit of an activity with this, sort of discuss what's going on in Israel. Let's get a sense of what's actually going to happen perhaps next week. What are the different scenarios and why this is all just a little bit complicated, just a little bit confusing. And so as we go through, feel free to enter a question or two in the chat, and I'll do my best to take a peek and sort of see what's going on. But once to get an understanding of why this is so complicated, what's at stake in this election, and who are the players, who are the voices that are running. So, how the Israeli government works, at least hypothetically speaking, how it works. Rooted in the ancient tradition of the Rabbinic Sanhedrin, that was the rabbinic authority, the rabbinic council at that time, the Israeli government, also known as the Knesset, is comprised of 120 members. The seats are allotted to a political party based on the percentage of votes they receive. Assuming no party gets the majority of seats, which hasn't happened in a long time, a coalition must be formed. The party who receives the most votes traditionally gets the opportunity to form a coalition, and the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. In order to get a party to join a coalition, there's usually some wheeling and dealing involved, as parties in a coalition do not necessarily agree on every issue. Each party is then offered a portfolio: defense, education, finance, foreign affairs, religious and cultural matters, etc., which then the leader of that party will take ownership of in the new government. So that's how it's supposed to work. And so the issue that Israel has had is they've had a lot of trouble building coalition. They've had trouble coming to an agreement and getting to that magic number of 61. And even when they do, it becomes very tenuous. And let's say you have a government that consists of 61 seats, and you have a group of three, a coalition of three that is part of your government. If they're unhappy with what you're doing, if you're not catering to them as the prime minister, they can leave your government, and that would leave you with 58 seats, which is not enough. And then you have to have new elections. So that has sort of been the cycle that Israel has been in recently, where the very last government had been a coalition government, a unity government, actually, of Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and Benny Gantz's party, Kachol Levan, the blue and white. They formed a unity government, which lasted all of a few months until they came to a situation where they couldn't agree on a budget. The government collapsed, and now we're off to the races for a new election. And so with that said, what are we going to see this next week? How are we going to build that coalition? And I need you all to stay with me, pay attention a little bit, because I want you, hopefully at the end of this in your chat box, to maybe send me a coalition government that will work. Maybe we can send it to Jerusalem and see whether or not they'll figure it out from there. Maybe we can help them along in this process. Maybe we have the answer. Who's who? We know this guy, right? This guy we know. He's been around for about 14 years. Prime Minister Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu. He is the leader of the Likud party, the prime minister, which has the most seats now in the current government, 37 seats. Okay, and so their platform is, obviously it's a right-wing party. They oppose the two-state solution. They're secular by nature in the party. They're not a religious party, which we're going to come to a little bit later, right? But their party platform is more secular. They obviously are very strong on national security. They have a streak of nationalism, Israel first policy. Pro settlements, of course, they're very interested and engaged in keeping the settlements in the West Bank, to make sure that the settlers are there and they don't want to move them, take them out. They were leaning towards, and still, I think as part of their platform, lead towards annexation. Israel should unilaterally annex parts of the West Bank that they feel should be theirs in any future peace agreement. They've tabled annexation for the moment as part of, you might have seen last year, there were a flurry of sort of peace deals of statements of cooperation between Israel and a few different Arab countries. So in exchange for those deals, Israel had agreed to put annexation on the back burner. And so annexation still is part of their platform, but right now it's, again, more in the rear view right now. Fiscally conservative, free market. They're not really that engaged with creating any big changes on matters of religion and state. And of course, in military service being very important to the Likud party, that Israelis need to serve in their military, in their not so volunteer army. It's a mandatory service. So that's who's ruling right now, so to speak. That's who's leading, I should say. The Israeli government is the Likud party with Bibi Netanyahu. Now, of course, all of this is a referendum, they're saying now, on Netanyahu himself, because he is also, as many of you probably know, on trial for corruption in Israel. And so he is fighting in court, as well as trying to sort of struggle to remain prime minister. And those things happen to be perhaps a little bit linked, because if he's not prime minister, doesn't have the office, it might also lead to a greater problem for him in the future. Whereas if he's prime minister, he could try to pass a law that says a sitting prime minister cannot be, sentenced to jail time. He's fighting both, on two fronts right now. So that is Likud. That's who we know. Bibi has been around for a long time. We know who he is. We know what his deal is. Who else is around? We have this gentleman here, Yair Lapid, been around for a little while as well. Yesh Atid, which literally means there is a future. They've been involved in the government the past few cycles. He is more of a centrist. He is seen as Bibi's primary challenger this go around. They have 16 seats in the current Knesset. They are centrists. They are pro two-state solution. They believe in religious pluralism, civil marriage. So right now in Israel, if you want to get married, you have to get married by a rabbi, and an Orthodox rabbi at that. And so there is no civil marriage right now. And so Yair Lapid wants to see more of secular life cycle events, being allowed in Israel, and it's not controlled entirely by the Orthodox rabbinate. Other economic, issues, of course. He wants to deal with economic injustice. He also is very pro LGBTQ and education reform as well. And he also wants to see a universal draft. Right now, the ultra-Orthodox do not have to serve, the Haredim. You can claim an exemption from military service. And Yair Lapid is somebody who says, look, we're all living in Israel. We all need to serve in some capacity, right? So if they're not going to serve in the military, maybe there are other ways they can serve for those 2 years, 2 or 3 years of service, depending, right? So they want to see, are there ways of getting them more involved? So it's collaborative. Everyone is doing something, and they're not just in the yeshiva studying Talmud all day. Next, we get to a new party, New Hope, Tikva Chadasha. Gideon Sa'ar, center-right, right-wing. He actually broke off from the Likud. He broke off from Bibi Netanyahu's party. And so he has a similar sort of portfolio, a similar sort of platform to Likud, but he's pretty much anti-Bibi. he's not a big fan of Netanyahu anymore. And the one thing he does want to see that you might see is different here. He wants to see government reform, especially term limits. So you can't have a prime minister going on forever and ever. He also believes that it's our responsibility as a state to increase the social services, to make sure that no one is left behind, and also to really work on and continue to improve areas of strength like technology and infrastructure. Yamina, another new party, Naftali Bennett, who's been around for a while, another right-wing party, but more of a religious party, religious Zionism. And so that because this party is new and has a lot of things sort of mushed together, they also have a secular contingent as well, which is why their platform's a little bit jumbled, but opposed to a two-state solution. They're a little unclear on their things towards annexation. They do believe in tax cuts and some limiting of government regulation as a right-wing party. Next, we have our friends in Yisrael Beitenu. You're going to hear this guy's name a lot next week, Avigdor Lieberman, who's going to be, they think he might be a kingmaker, so to speak, because of the number of seats he has perhaps coming to him in the next election, that he might be able to swing the tide of the election. Another right-wing party, very secular. Their base is Russian, former Soviet Union immigrants. So those are the ones that are sort of drive that party. And like Yair Lapid, he is very much pro-drafting the Haredim into the IDF or into some kind of service for those couple of years. While other people might be serving in the army, he wants them to serve as well in some capacity, which leads to a bit of a schism, which is, again, part of the fun here between the right-wing parties, is that you might have a right-wing party that is pro-drafting the ultra-Orthodox to the army, and others, as we're going to see in a moment, not so much. Shas, Shas Aryeh Deri, who served a stint in prison as well, I might add, but, all is forgiven. He's still running, in the government. He is another, he's right-wing, Haredim, ultra-Orthodox, but from the Sephardic side of things, right? The immigrants from Spain, from the Middle East, so that's his base, the Sephardic community. Two-state solution, it's sort of ambiguous. They don't really care about that as much. They can take it or leave it. But they believe in a halachic state, that Israel should be run according to Torah law, according to Jewish tradition. And so that's obviously a little bit of a departure. We haven't really seen that much yet. But that's sort of what their platform states. They want to see is a Jewish state that is run by Jewish law and by Orthodox Jewish law. Support of settlements. Also, he wants reparations for the Jews who were exiled out of Middle Eastern countries, of African nations. He wants to see some reparations made there. He's anti-LGBTQ. The party is, I should say, as they are very religiously conservative, and that informs, of course, their social conservatism as well. On the flip side, from Shas, which is the Sephardic group, you have United Torah Judaism, which is the Orthodox group, the Haredim group from the Ashkenazic communities, the Ashkenazic immigrants from Eastern Europe. Again, very religious, obviously. Two-state solution, they can take it or leave it. But again, they want to see that religious state, no separation between church and state, so to speak. Synagogue and state, perhaps, in our case, in this one. No civil marriage, the rabbis control everything. And of course, no military service for the Haredim. There's no interest in it. Now we get to labor. Labor used to be, for those of us who remember, labor used to be the party in Israel, right? Labor was a huge force, in Israel. They were always part of the government, if not leading the government. And they have fallen on hard times the past 20 years or so. They've had a lot more difficulty, gaining a foothold. Meirav Micheli, is the leader of the party right now. And you can see this is our first party. I think we can actually say this is more of a left-wing party, a social democratic. They are pro two-state solution. They are, liberal Zionists. They believe obviously in the Jewish state and Israel as the homeland for the Jews, but they are also very interested in seeing more to make sure that all citizens of Israel, right, are treated equally, as well, to make sure that there's never any sort of cases of discrimination. some economic things that we can see about taxation and minimum wage, education, a lot of funding for public health care. We can see them sort of as analogous to some of the progressive wings in the U.S. society. Meretz would be more on the ultra left. Nitzan Horowitz is the one leading that party. Very left wing, social democratic two-state solution. Again, very similar to Labor, but even further to the left. And very interested in green initiatives. They're very pro-environment. And I think our last one that we're going to just touch on for a moment is the Joint List. And the Joint List is very important. The Joint List is a group of Arab parties that have come together, Israeli Arab parties that are part of the Knesset. Right now they have 11 seats, which is not nothing, in the Knesset. They are led by Ayman Odeh. It's a left-wing Israeli Arab party, of course, pro two-state solution and Palestinian nationalism, very important to them. But they are very ideologically diverse because they are a blend of three parties. Used to be a blend of four parties, but now one left, now it's three, giving them 11 seats. It is important to note as we get on to our exercise that they have never sat in a government. They've never actually sat in the majority in a government. They've always been in the opposition. And they came close last time, and they actually wanted to be part of Benny Gantz's coalition, Kachol v'Lavan, but Benny turned them down, which didn't really work out so well for Benny Gantz in the end. In terms of how he was trying to build a coalition. But there is obviously a separation there still. But right now, they do hold a little bit of sway because they get X number of seats in the Knesset. So with all of that said, I knew I just threw a lot at you. This is right now the current projections for what's going to happen next week. Now, of course, who knows? These things could be off by one or two, if not a little bit more. And part of the fun of this is that if they are off by one or two, it actually can make a big swing in trying to form a government. There is a hope that Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, has that some of these parties that you'll see over here on this side, sort of Kachol v'Lavan down, that they don't break the threshold, that they don't break the 3.25% that you have to get in order to be part of the government. And if they don't get there, it's going to give more seats perhaps to Netanyahu-friendly parties. Okay, I see a little. So where is Benny Gantz? A great question, Karen. Benny Gantz, because once the government failed, once the unity government broke, he saw his popularity and his party drop like a stone. So whereas last election, they were a big force to be reckoned with. They were the ones who might have even been prime minister, after Netanyahu. He took a big dive. And so you can see here, Kachol v'Lavan is now projected only to get 5 seats. And that's maybe if they're lucky at this point, because the reason for this nosedive is because he had made a campaign promise that he would never join a government with Netanyahu as prime minister. But through some cajoling and through some whatever it is, the reality was he had to, if he wanted to be part of the government and create the government, to be with Netanyahu and have him be the prime minister and him sort of being the second officer, so to speak, the not the vice president per se, but again with a big portfolio. That was seen as an act of betrayal, and so he has again taken a pretty big hit in this, which is why you see Kachol v'Lavan over here with only a projection of 5 seats. And so that's the story of poor Benny. He's not doing so well right now in Israeli politics. The other two parties I didn't mention that you'll see on this list, the United Arab List, which is on the bottom over here, projected only to get a couple of seats. They were part of the Joint List, and they broke off for themselves. And so they are not looking to they're not probably going to get a lot of votes in this election. And then we have our friends over here with religious Zionism, very controversial. These are the disciples of Meir Kahane, if we remember, his whole story back then, sort of a Jewish supremacist party. They are basically they want to see only Jews in Israel. They want to expel any Israeli Arabs. They are pro in their platform. They're actually pro violence against the Arab community. It's basically analogous if the Proud Boys had was in charge of one of the major portfolios in the United States. That's basically the metaphor that's being used here, the comparison that's being used here. They are a conglomeration, of different ultra right wing parties, and it has been a source of some discomfiture, perhaps, that the current prime minister has sort of reached out to them because there might be a scenario where he needs their small group to help make a government, which would make one of these people perhaps an important person in Israeli government, which is not looked upon, very happily for a lot of Israelis. And so that's these folks right here, religious Zionism, with potentially four seats. So that's the down and dirty of it. That's everybody that we have in this election. And so if we look at these numbers, based on these projections, how do we form a government? How do we actually form something that works? Would somebody like to hazard a guess in the chat box? How are you going to get to 61 seats? In this scenario, if these numbers do hold, which of course they won't. There's going to be some shifting. How do we get to 61? How do we find a way to form a government in this election when you have so many diverse ideas and diverse opinions? And so, yes, we see a lot there. Exactly right. So Eric and Gloria have very wisely mentioned that it's a lot of horse trading, which is exactly right. And, there's a lot of wheeling and dealing that goes around here with the portfolios. And so you have to sort of find your way to create something that works. And so there are three possible scenarios that can occur here. But if we start with the first one, and I'll keep an eye on the chat for any further sort of questions or different ideas about how to do this. So the first scenario that we can have is that Bibi Netanyahu is able to form a government. He's able to form a very right-wing government. And so let's all do some math together. Likud, if this projection holds, 29 seats. His natural partners, first is going to be Shas and United Torah Judaism, which is 15. The ultra-Orthodox right-wing religious parties, those are in his camp. So you have 15 there, plus 29 gives you 44, if my math is right, which I think it is. And right here, Yamina at 11, this right-wing party as well, Naftali Bennett's group, have indicated that they would sit in a government with Netanyahu that gets you to 55, right? 55 seats. You still need 61. So where is he going to pick it up? Yesh Atid won't sit with him, right? Lapid has said he's not going to sit in the Netanyahu government. Same thing with New Hope. They've said nope. They have split off from Likud. They have no interest in joining a Netanyahu government. No luck there. The sea will split again and again and turn, green and polka dots before the joint list or the United Arab list joins a Netanyahu government. So that's no help there. Labor, one could perhaps see it, but again, they've shown no interest in doing that. And same, of course, with Kachol V'Lavan. And so you're still sort of stuck at 55. And so they would need to get, and this is the concern perhaps, if you don't get Yisrael Beitenu, if you don't get their 7, votes, because 7 gets you to 62, right? And so you'd be good there, for a government. But Yisrael Beitenu has sort of said, we're not so interested in a Netanyahu government anymore. We're done with Bibi. We've had enough, right? And so they're still stuck at 55 unless Beitenu comes in with their 7, or alternatively, and I would argue not so happily, that if this religious Zionist party winds up with enough seats, that they could perhaps be a swing factor in the government. So Netanyahu probably has the best path to getting over 60 seats in this election. That's the first scenario. The second one is to form sort of a center left government led by Lapid and Yesh Atid. But if you look at the math again, it's a little tricky. So you have 20 here, you get 11 from New Hope, right? That gives you 31. Yamin is not playing with them; they don't want to, so it's 31. You go down to Beitenu once again if they want to join. That gives you 38. Labor, sort of that center-left block, at 44. Kachol V'Lavan, 49. And then Meretz, you're at 52. And so that's not going to work, unless they find some other way to do this, either by getting the joint list and the United Arab list to sit with them, which I don't think is going to happen. Or you saw how convinced Yamina, or you do, as the Adlers stated, some horse trading with the ultra-Orthodox parties and see if they would join a government, which does not seem to be in the cards. So option 2 seems even further, seems even more far-fetched, which leads us to option 3. That we're going to be doing this all over again, the 5th election coming up perhaps in the fall. And so that is a very viable option right now. No one wants it, which might facilitate some of this wheeling and dealing if they can sort of get themselves, or someone can stomach getting themselves to 61. Sometimes politics makes strange bedfellows. But you can just see how complicated this is, because there's a lot of competing interests and groups that don't really like each other. There's a lot of polarization, as one can imagine, which makes it very hard to have this coalition government, which is why they've had so much trouble the past couple of go-arounds to actually create some kind of functioning government. Because remember, when this breaks apart, there's no legislation. Like, the Israeli government has been basically non-functional for the better part of 2 years. It's a miracle that things are going as they're going now, because it's very complicated for them, just because there's not a lot going on legislatively in Israel right now. So with all of that said, I wanted to mention one final thing, which I think is pretty cool. Hopefully you will as well. In the Labor Party, right? Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who is a Reform rabbi, is very likely going to be in the next Knesset, whether he is sitting in the majority or in opposition. He will likely be in the next government. He is not running Labor, right? But he is going to be, like, I think, the 4th or 5th person listed. So if they get 5 or 6 seats, he's going to be in the government, which would be an amazing thing to have a Reform rabbi. He's a lawyer, he's a scholar, he heads up the Israeli movement for progressive Judaism. And I think it's a really cool thing to see a Reform rabbi for the first time sit in the Israeli government in Knesset. So that's a really cool thing to look out for. That's pretty exciting. We have a question from Barbara Bachman about, can Bibi recover from his legal issues? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how, but yeah. As I mentioned, a couple of these dudes that are running parties now have served some stints in prison. So with that said, Bibi Netanyahu has sort of shown his ability to be pretty much Teflon. Whether or not he actually gets convicted of this is another question. But his legal issues have been going on for a while, and somehow he manages to surmount them. And with all the different things we spoke about in terms of different party platforms, honestly, this election comes down to really one thing, it looks like, and that is Netanyahu. Whether or not people are happy enough to have him continue to be prime minister, despite the legal problems, amidst other issues. But that's obviously the big one. Is he going to still be elected to try to form the government again? Is his party going to get the most votes, I should say, to form the government, which is very easily it's a very likely scenario, maybe the most likely behind perhaps new elections, is Netanyahu does wind up serving again as prime minister, and he has to fight his legal troubles in court, and he'll obviously try to pass legislation that will indemnify him. Yeah, will prevent him from being prosecuted. So that's what he's working on right now. So he has shown certainly, over the course of his political career, that he can survive pretty much anything. And so I wouldn't count him out. I'll put it that way. It makes for a very interesting Israeli election season, and it's something that, one of the reasons I like to talk about it, aside from it being interesting, I think, in us as American Jews, we have a stake, obviously, in what goes on in Israel, is that, like, for us, like, we need to sort of, like, pay attention and sort of see, because it does affect us. It affects the American Jewish community, because we have, obviously, a loving relationship, with our homeland, with the land of Israel, and we want to see, stability. We want to see good things obviously be happening, for the state of Israel. And this constant election mishigas is not a good thing. And so, hopefully something is formed that is stable, and that is going to sort of work and sort of serve, our brethren in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, to have a little bit more of that stability, which is so important. Our relationship, with Israel, obviously, is something that we should cherish, and it's important for us that Israel remains a strong Jewish democratic state, and so hopefully, God willing, we'll see some election results that will help further Israel's mission, and the Jewish people's mission of being a light to the nations. That's my spiel. We'll see how it all turns out next week. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're going to continue now with Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר, והיה אדוני, למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, let's meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall the loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. The congregation is sad to report the news of the passing of Joseph McMullen, son of Rick and Barbara McMullen, and brother of Jennifer. And so we send our condolences to Rick and Barbara. Rick, for years, was a member of our temple staff, serving on our serving the community with his work on the maintenance side of things. And recently retired and moved to Kentucky. So we send our condolences to Rick and Barbara on the passing of their son, Joseph. We are in the Shloshim period for the memory of Carolee Pizzuti, wife of Robert Pizzuti, sister of Barbara, brother of Richard, children Rebecca, Rachel, and Raina, proud bubby of Isabella, Cara, Adam, and Andrew. She's also the loving aunt of Denise, and great aunt of Jillian, Sophia, and Daniela. And so we send our condolences, of course, to Carolee's family, all of her loved ones, and of course, all of our synagogue members who are grieving her loss. We're also in the Shloshim period for Judy Guy Strickland, sister of Stacy Guy and sister-in-law of Jeffrey Lopatin, and Alan Beer, husband of Jamie, father of Alec, Jordan, and Abram, and son-in-law of Joel and Sandy Broida. We also think of those who died in this past year. Maxine Roth, Howard Rubin, Sheldon Ginsberg, Larry Krug, Gene Weissman, Jack Moshbitz, Jerry Bender, Solomon Bloom, Max Schmid, Louis Lederer, Deborah Nader, Ted Ross, Helen Roth, Ruth Jean Oberlander, Mark Enfinger, Alan Beer, Judy Guy Strickland, and Carolee Pizzuti. And we think of those who died this season in years past and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We're observing the yahrzeit this week of Harold Ech, Robert T. Benjamin Sr., H. Nathaniel Brody, Herbert Budd, Sarah Dolan, Ella Einhorn, Robert David Freeman, Marlene Garnick, Frida Gertzov, Loretta Green, Ann Eldridge Hall, Barbara K. Jackman, Ann Taub Kamelhar, Hazel M. K., Louis Kissin, Lillian Kissin, Gussie Corin, Hortense Lasher, Elias Lefkowitz, Rose Levine, Irvin Levy, Arlene Lieber, Felice Lopatin, Ruth Maslov, Earl W. Moore Jr., Anna Morin, Norman Eli Moss, Rayla Moss, Edward C. Newman, Edward Nobler, George E. Owens, Alan Resnick, Samuel Rotman, Samuel Rubin, Ruben Ruttenberg, Joseph Schaefer, Gertrude Schwartz, Elizabeth Libby Schwartz, Max Schumann, Joan Sirakers, Riva R. Stern, David Stewarski Jr., Evelyn Thorpe, Ida Verona, Rezi Weil, and Esther Weinberg. If you'd like to mention the name of someone you are thinking of this evening who has passed, you can please enter their name in our chat box. As the memories of all of them are with us, griefs and sympathies are mingled as we praise God's name and affirm the holiness of memory. Yitgadal v'yitgadas shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divracha utei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam l'amei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechamata da'miran bi'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us, to Israel, and all of the world. As together we say, Amen. It's now my pleasure to invite our temple president to unmute Nina Warshawski for a few synagogue announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, Temple B'nai Israel, Cantor Rabbi, thank you for the service. I've got a couple quick announcements. Next Sunday, the 28th, is going to be our Vert Seder. You can find the Zoom link on the e-blasts. Cantor Orangel is starting a year-long program, a Rosh Chodesh, starting April 13th, and it's going to center around the women of Judaism. And everybody knows Polly Krause and Renee Ramey and how much they do for Temple B'nai Israel. They have one thing that they're incredibly passionate about, and that's social action. And they've chaired our social action committee for several years. And the main way that they do community social action is through FAST, which is Faith and Action for Stronger Together. Basically, Temple B'nai Israel joins with over 40 other congregations in Pinellas County to stand for justice within our community. They pick a couple topics that they work on for multiple years to try to get the local officials to take action. And on Monday, March 22nd at 7 p.m. is the annual Giant Nehemiah action, where you literally bring in our community leaders and the people who are on the FAST committee, stand them up and ask them questions and hold them accountable. And the topics that they're going to discuss this year, and they've been working on for multiple years, is more affordable housing, criminal justice reform, mental health, and addiction concerns. And they're going to be asking public officials to take concrete steps to implement proven solutions for the problems above. And we need all of you to participate through Zoom. Rabbi Lobel is going to put the link in the chat box so you can register yourself, register anybody who lives in your household. We have committed to 100 people to participate in this event when Monday, the 22nd at 7 o'clock through Zoom. So let's help Polly and Renee meet their commitment to the fast and be there on Monday for them. Finally, of course, food fast. Get your orders in by March 31st. And if you would like to help volunteer on the day of the event or the day before, that would be great. And as always, thank you for everyone who's participated in the Torah Circle and who is a member of the Life and Legacy program. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, let's see those cookies. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat 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 shalom.
So we can see the link for fast, hopefully in the chat box. And so if you click on that and register, that would be great. You know, I serve on the executive committee of fast. It would be really great to see everyone there to help support these important social justice causes. Also, we have one more link. The Cantor created a really beautiful Passover card for our community. And so it's on the website. So I dropped that link there as well. It's interactive. It's like 26 little hidden, really cute videos and activities. So if you want to click on that, check it out. It's a lot of fun as well.
We hope to see you at Passover.
Yes, indeed. It would be great.
Shabbat shalom all.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.